Welcome, everybody. This is the first event of the Pre-Health Application Week, and this is our event of today, Admissions in the House, Q&A with Med School admissions reps. And it will be presented by the UCLA Career Center, and we have 5 schools. And this is our agenda for today's event, and all the 5 schools reps listed there. And just a reminder, we have another event of the series coming up at 7 p.m. today, and this is the next event in case you want to participate in that. And now I'm going to stop my screen share, and I will invite our representatives to join us. And here they are. And I will start with Agassia. You are on my right on the screen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Agasia Lanier, and I am with Kaiser Permanente Bernard J. Tyson School of Medicine. We are fairly new medical school located in Pasadena, California. We opened our doors in July of, oh my gosh, July 2020. So right at the height of the pandemic. So been chugging along, and we are actually bringing in our 3rd class this July. So we're very proud of that. I've been with the school since November 2018. So I guess you can say I'm one of the veterans at the school, and it is a pleasure to be here with all of you today.
Thank you so much. Next on my screen is Zia and Jose.
Thank you so much. We are here with California Health Sciences University College of Osteopathic Medicine. Like Agasia, we opened at the same time. We are also a new school. We are now also recruiting for our 3rd cohort that will start in July of this year, which is crazy. But yes, we also, our inaugural class started in July of 2020. So we're going into our 3rd year. I have worked for CHSU-Com in admissions for the past 3 years, and I actually work in admissions and student affairs now. I'm joined by my colleague, Jose, who is one of our newer colleagues, but he is actually the one who's probably going to be answering most of the questions this evening. I'm going to kind of hang back and let him handle most of it. Jose, go for it.
Well, thank you, Zia, and it's great to be here with all of you. My name is Jose Medina. I'm the admissions outreach specialist for CHSU-Com. And so just like real briefly, because I know we're the only DO school, we are a doctor of osteopathic medicine. So our students are training with a holistic approach. So, and just like an MD, they're fully trained. So we have a lot of amazing students, and I look forward to answering all of your questions this evening. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Mark, you're next on my screen.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Priolo. I'm the Director of Admission and Recruitment for the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix. That is a distinction that I'd just put out there to begin with. We do have 2 campuses. And what's unique about our 2 campuses in Phoenix and Tucson is we're separately accredited medical schools. So we have our separate admission processes, separate curriculum, faculty, all the kind of pieces that go with that. So anything that I talk about this evening is going to be specific to our Phoenix campus and not Tucson. We are the newer of the 2 campuses. We're usually the newest school in these sessions, but not today, apparently. We had our inaugural class in 2007 of about 24 students, and we're currently enrolling our targeted class size of 120. So look forward to answering all your questions and engaging with you this evening.
Thank you. Mike?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Richards. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions at the Keck School of Medicine of USC. They've been around quite some time now. I've been in the admissions office for 8 years. Prior to that, I was in the curriculum office and exam development for the MD program, years 1 and 2, for 2 years. So I've been there for quite some time. I really enjoy answering questions and trying to illuminate the selection process for folks. So please, I hope you have a lot of questions for us. and I'm happy to answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And last but of course not least is our very own Digisum Gio. Take it over.
Hey everybody, good evening. My name is Vara. I am the admissions coordinator at the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. I am also very excited to be a representative here. This is my first, I think, time being on a panel. So likewise, as everybody else has mentioned, I look forward to all the questions. As you all may know, UCLA's medical program has been around since around 1951. We've got 4 different medical school tracks. We've got your MD Master's program or MD PhD track, and then 2 separate MD tracks, one known as a traditional MD at UCLA and the other known as the traditional MD / group track. So definitely looking forward to answering any of your questions. And thank you again, once again, for inviting me.
I see that the chat is already very live. I like that. So please make sure that you put your questions for the panelists in the Q&A. It's just much easier for us to track it. If you have a question specific to one of the schools, then just start UCLA or USC or whichever school you want to address the question to. That's going to be very helpful to us. And if we don't get to all of the questions, then maybe the reps can be answering the questions coming directly to them just by typing the answers. So as I introduce myself, I'm the pre-med advisor, one of them at UCLA, assistant director to pre-health initiatives. So my questions are those gray areas. But before I get into those, if there is anything you want to share right off the bat about your application process that you know that it's either new or just recently new, because with COVID, there were so many changes in the past 2 years about the application process. So if there is anything that comes to your mind that you want students to particularly know about, feel free to share it. And then I'll go into my questions as we go. Anyone? Mike?
Yeah, one thing I would mention is that we don't require any specific coursework for application eligibility. We did away with the requirements about 12 years ago just to invite or encourage people from a broad range of academic disciplines to apply to our program. So we only require the MCAT and letters of recommendation. So I think that's a pretty novel kind of thing. I don't know how many medical schools do that, but we have a very liberal application process, and I think that really helps, allows people to kind of prepare in the way that best suits their circumstances.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that. So it's already worth me being here. Anyone else? Or anybody? I'm just looking at mics. Yes, go ahead.
I would say for our school, we've been virtual in regards to interviews for the last 2 years. So I am proud to say we are definitely planning for 2023 to be back in person. Got to go ahead and cross my fingers there and hope that we don't have returned to virtual. But if we do, we are ready. Well, now that we have 2 years under our belt of virtual, we can switch if need be. But the plan is to go back to in-person interviews, and we are so happy about that.
All right, so we already piling up questions in the Q&A, so maybe, okay, so let me ask just a couple of questions for myself, and whoever wants to chime in, please do so. How many letters of recommendations do you require and from whom?
I can.
Oh, go right ahead, Jose.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much. I didn't see anybody unmute. So I can go ahead and jump in for CHSU. We do require 3 letters of recommendation. 1 letter from a physician, being a DO or an MD, 1 from a science faculty member, and then 1 that we will call the wild card. So that's anybody that can just really, attest to your fit for osteopathic medicine. So we want to make sure that they kind of know your passion for osteopathic medicine and how you will be a strong candidate and a strong fit for CHSU.
I can follow up on that. Gio again from UCLA. We require 3 to 5 letters of recommendation. No exact requirement in who that letter needs to come from. As long as the person can vouch on your ability to perform as a student or in a lab setting or in an employment setting, because we also look at non-traditional students just as much as we look at traditional students, you would be perfectly fine. So 3 to 5 is what we're looking for.
Great.
I can go next. We require 3 to 6 letters of recommendation or committee letter if your school participates in committee letters. No specific requirement. I would say academic letter of reference would be strongly encouraged. Let's say that, not strongly encouraged. If you don't have that, it's not going to hurt you, but they do love to see that in your file if possible.
At Keck, we don't really have a requirement on who writes the letter, but we recommend that people submit a committee letter, or in lieu of that, they can submit up to 2 to 3 individual letters, and those can be from anyone of your choosing. We don't really have a requirement on that. Most people, though, they still send 2 science professor letters and or 1 kind of personal reference type of letter.
And at College of Medicine Phoenix, we do require 3 to 5 letters of recommendation, very similar to the other schools here this evening. We don't have a requirement either for it to come from particular individuals, though we do strongly recommend one come from a clinical environment that you participated in. The other thing that we typically recommend, and again, this is just a recommendation, not necessarily a requirement, is try and get letters from individuals that can talk about unique parts of your personality. So, try and not to submit 5 letters all from a science faculty member. Try not to submit, all your letters from an employer. If you choose individuals that kind of interact with you in engage with you in different ways, that's going to help us get a broader understanding of you as an individual.
Thank you. And we're going to start on the Q&A because it is piling up. So first question, if we finish our major earlier than expected as a sophomore, would you recommend graduating early, or would you recommend doing another major minor and staying in college for longer?
Yeah, I can tackle that one. I think for UCLA, it's a pretty simple answer. One of our only hard requirements to apply or to be eligible to apply is you have to have had a bachelor's degree or graduate degree from a US or Canadian institution. And all along that note, with the bachelor's degree, there's also that fine print that's 3 years or a bachelor's degree. So considering that as a sophomore, you only have 2 years under your belt, to be considered for admissions at DGSOM, it would probably be beneficial to stay for at least 1 more additional year to fulfill that 3-year or bachelor's degree requirement.
Anyone else would like to answer that?
I would just add at Keck, I would say that that's a question that you would need to work out with your pre-health advisor, because they can really, get into, what your goals are, what your immediate goals are, and your plans are. It's really hard to make an arbitrary statement on what you ought to do with years of preparation. So I say you really need to work with your pre-health advisor on that and come to a strategy that that really fits what you're trying to accomplish and the time frame that you have planned for yourself.
And we are definitely here to help with that. And you can also talk with your academic advisors about course selection in addition to what you're already thinking of taking. So take advantage of the resources on campus for that. Next question for CHSU. Is it a requirement for students to shadow a DO before applying, or is it okay to shadow an MD?
So for that, the way that we do look at it, there is no wrong answer, that's all experience, shadowing experience, but we do want to make sure that you're passionate for osteopathic medicine. So shadowing a DO may be a little bit ideal, but you're not going to get, of course, penalized for your shadowing experience. So it's just strongly encouraged that you shadow a DO.
So I'm trying to monitor the chat too, so I'm going to go back and forth between questions. So there is one in the chat asking, how do you view virtual shadowing program as an alternative to in-person shadowing? And that was one of my questions too, because I get it all the time. Go ahead, Agastya.
Well, for us, we don't see it any differently. I mean, we completely understand that COVID has changed everything in regards to how we are reviewing applicants. We know you may have less hours, or maybe you did convert over to maybe a virtual option. And honestly, I kind of find that pretty good if you were able to have that opportunity to go virtual and shadow as well. So it wouldn't be seen as a hindrance or anything like that for our committee.
Anybody else?
I just want to
Mark?
add quickly from our perspective on this one, it's the same. I would just caution, though, that there is a wide range of what kind of groups are considering virtual shadowing opportunities. And so sometimes not all of those are going to meet kind of the substance of what we're looking for in terms of that experience. So if you do have questions about maybe a particular instance that you've participated in, just reach out to us and we'll kind of talk you through that.
Mike?
I would just add to that, you know, a lot of, I know our reviewers, the way they look at applicants and their experience is they're really looking for like what you got out of the experience. So, you know, we're not so much focused on the category of the experience. You know, we hope that you have some significant clinical experience or shadowing experience, just so that you can, you know, feel confident in foreclosing on a career in medicine. But it's really, I think, more so than the particular activity, it's the way you talk about it, the way you portray it, the way you talk about its impact on your values, your growth and development, your career readiness for a career in medicine. Those things are extremely important. You know, it's not about the number of hours, you know, per se. It's really about the quality of the experience and what that experience meant for you. That's what I think people should really focus on the most.
Thank you. Let's jump to the next one. This one, a very open-ended one. So give us, you know, what do you look for in a candidate in a nutshell?
That is a fantastic question, because I do not think that there is a straightforward answer for that. But generally at CHSU-Com, we will do a holistic review of your application. So, you know, looking at your research experience, the shadowing, whether it be virtual or in person, as was previously mentioned, you know, your letters of recommendation, community service. So just we look at you as a whole individual and see where you would fit at the school and even out in our communities after you finish with us at CHSU-Com. So I think as long as you have like a strong application that shows and highlights who you are and how you relate, at least on our end, to osteopathic medicine, then I don't think you can go wrong.
Anyone else? Gio?
Of course, yeah, I can jump on in here. Likewise, similar to Jose, we have also a holistic approach. So I think at the fundamental level, you know, when considering either of our 4 tracks, I think we're looking for well-rounded candidates. You know, of course, metrics are just, you know, one component of the application process. So I think, you know, it's important to focus on the extracurricular activities, because I think those can definitely contribute to the admissions process, which would be, you know, your community service, your leadership, your research, et cetera, and so forth. But I guess the side to the answer is that it also would depend at UCLA which program you're applying to. The reason I say that is, like I said, holistically at the baseline, we're looking for well-rounded candidates. But if you're applying to the MSTP track, they will look at students and will view the ones that are most competitive as the ones that have the greater amount of research experience. Likewise, if you're applying to the DRU track, which is our MD track, that focuses on working with the underserved. They love looking at students that have an emphasis on community service. If you're applying specifically to the MD Prime program, which focuses on leadership advocacy and community service, they would be looking for individuals that have significant leadership experience and potentially have done work in the community, right? So have that heavy community service component to their application. Whereas when you look at the traditional MD, we're really just looking at that holistic, well-rounded candidate. So while all 4 have that holistic process, I do do think it's important to note that depending on which program you are applying to, there are going to be certain areas that you're going to need to be stronger in to stand out as a competitive candidate.
Agashia?
I went directly to my my information session slides. I get this question all the time, so I knew where to go. I always say this to every prospective applicant that I speak with, but you want to always look to a school's mission and vision to kind of get an idea of what kind of student they're looking for. That'll give you some clues, but of course you want some concrete things. So I'll also throw those out. For us, we're looking for excellent critical thinkers. We're looking for those that are mature and adaptable. You can demonstrate a desire to thrive in a diverse and inclusive environment. You value coaching and small group learning, good team players, appreciate an experiential curriculum, and demonstrate a desire to become lifelong learners.
All right, next question. Anybody else? All right, so we're gonna move on to why is that medical school classes cohorts are so small? 120 students per class is so small when compared to undergrad.
I probably have the smallest class size among most schools here, so I'll start. We are admitting right now 50 students per cohort, and that was done for two reasons that I can think of right now. One is due to accreditation. They wanted us to keep our class sizes a little smaller until our first class graduates. And second is just wanted to, well, for one, I'm sorry, other panelists, our free tuition. Yes, we are giving free tuition for the first 5 years. So I'm guessing that was probably the other reason why we kept our class sizes small. We do anticipate on increasing our class sizes after the first class graduates, but it'll probably be in small doses. So I see us going from like 50 to like 60 and so on.
Anyone else? Mark?
Yeah, so this is a little bit more of a complicated question in some regards, because part of it for us, at least, we originally were planning to grow to a size of 120, and that's what we capped it at, partially because of opportunities for clerkships within our clinical partners. There's limited space that students can practice during their medical education. And the same thing when you get to that next stage in your kind of progression in the residency programs. There's limited residency programs that are funded throughout the United States. So that kind of does put a limit on the total graduates that certain schools can have or that they choose to have.
All right, let's do the next question. For reapplicants, how should we address experiences that will not change for this year? Is it okay in the work and activities description to not change or slightly change those events if they have not changed between cycles?
I would say you probably want to have some kind of variation on your approach, because I know at our school the reviewer is going to read your past application and the current one. If they're exactly the same, that might not kind of spark the interest of the reviewer quite as much, because they feel like we've seen that already, and the way you portray, you might be an excellent candidate, by the way, and you just happen to not get an interview. But I wouldn't say make wholesale changes, but you definitely want to consider your approach and see where you can maybe bring out competencies or things maybe that you didn't in the last application. But you don't want to just go verbatim with the same material, I don't think.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that as well. This was actually my first year I got to start reading files, so exciting times for me. But one thing that I was looking at when it got to the work, the activity section, is I got a lot of people telling me about that experience, but I always wanted to know, well, what made you choose the experience in the first place? So that would be really nice to go through your activities and then maybe kind of reflect and put that in there as well.
I'm so happy you both said that, because I've been working with 3 applicants lately, and we go back and forth on this question, because sometimes students feel that if they change too much, you may see that they are trying to alter their experiences, although it hasn't changed. But I've been kind of advising what you're saying, that we probably need to look at all these experiences through fresh eyes and see how we may have be able to enrich the description to, explain more of what they might have done in these type of experiences. So thank you for the encouragement that I'm doing the right thing. Zia, you have your hand up.
Sure. Yeah. Just the one thing I would add to what the other panelists have said is, I can really only speak for our school, but I actually really appreciate seeing reapplicants, especially if they have taken a chance to approach things a bit differently the next time through. If they weren't successful in their first application process, there's probably a reason for that. Sometimes it's simply a matter of they were the pool of other folks that they were compared against, but likely there is something that they can do to make themselves a stronger candidate, whether it be additional experiences, maybe retaking the MCAT, maybe retaking some courses where they didn't get as strong a grade as they wanted. There are a variety of different things that folks can do differently. I think it's really important, if you are going to apply more than once, after you're not successful in your first application, I think it's really important to take a step back and take a very, very critical look at what you can do differently to present yourself more successfully the next time around. What kind of advice can you get from respected folks, whether it be your pre-health advisor or maybe physicians that you know. I want to see change. I don't want to see somebody reapply with exactly the same application. I want to see growth between those cycles.
Thank you. If your school has an MD MPH program, can you speak on what students do to get into this program, extracurriculars, for example, and what they go on to do with the degree after graduating?
I started my answer in the chat there, so I think I gave our answer. I wish I could tell you what they're going to go on and do, because we haven't had a first class graduate yet, or actually apply to the program, but hoping they will do good things. But for our MPH program that we do have, a joint program with UCLA, it's designed to be completed in 12 months because you're bringing in credits from our program into the program. You would be applying for the program at the end of your 3rd year, and you would take a leave of absence if accepted into the program. Unfortunately, you would be applying for financial aid through the partner school. We would not be covering the tuition for the program for you. Once you complete the program, you would return for your 4th and final year of medical school. And yeah, I hope you go on and do good things with that.
Anybody else?
Our MPH program is open to our 3rd year current students, and they basically just have to be in good academic standing to apply and enter the program. We covered the tuition portion of the MPH program. That part is funded for them. And after 5 years, they graduate with both degrees. You know, after that, after they graduate, they go on to residency, and then they, you know, after that, they begin their professional career in earnest. So I don't have any numbers on like what, you know, exactly you know, they do specifically with the MPH portion of their degree, but that degree does equip them to assume leadership roles in health care organizations, community-based organizations, organizations that do like public health, children's health, global health, things like that. Candidates that complete that MPH will, you know, have the skills to lead organizations and contribute as a leader in those situations.
Thank you. And now there is two questions. There are two questions about letters of rec. The first one is, would it be a mistake to include a TA's letter of reference who you have developed a close relationship with? I know it is allowed, but would you say a letter from a professor who knows you a little holds more or less weight than a letter from a PhD student, a TA who knows you very well? That's the first one.
We don't, this is Mark. I'm going to jump in just real quick. We don't have a specific recommendation for a faculty letter. So this might be different from the other schools, but really what we're looking at is the kind of the ability that the person has to speak to your kind of qualifications rather than title. So, you know, if it's from a TA, that's fine. If it's from a graduate student, that's fine. You know, we would prefer that over the faculty that doesn't know you as closely.
I see a lot of nodding.
Yeah, I would also resonate with that exact sentiment. UCLA is not going to necessarily look at, you know, who the letter's coming from, more so what they're saying about you as a candidate.
And I know many of you have difficulties approaching professors because of the online courses and various reasons. We will have a presentation on how to ask for letters of recommendation, I believe tomorrow at 5. So if you're interested, please make sure you come back. And the next one on the same topic, for those of your schools that require a strongly suggest letters from a science professor, how are you respective schools approaching these post-pandemic, especially in considering students at very large schools like UCLA? For those students that have excelled in public global health coursework, for example, and have focused less on hard sciences during their college career, what would you recommend to be these requirements if we are having difficulty meeting these requirements, and are any exceptions being made?
I'll jump at that. Again, you know, it's something that we would love to see, but it's not a requirement for us. So if we get it, I will definitely say this with COVID-19, you know, this is definitely going to affect application cycles probably for the next couple of years. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about, you know, who you're getting that letter from. I think what my colleague just said a few moments ago is really about what that person is saying about you. So look for that person who just knows you very well and can speak to your characteristics. But yeah, I don't think you should worry too much about it's a specific thing, unless the school does have a requirement. Definitely check in with that school, but for us, we don't have that requirement.
And I'll just add too, you have to kind of educate your letter writer on who you are, like what your values are, what your goals are, what things you've done to prepare. You know, you have to kind of give them a little background, something to go on, so that they can write a full-throated endorsement for you, you know, instead of just relying on them and maybe their memory of you in class, or, you know, you want to be able to highlight to them the things that you want to, you know, highlight to the medical school reviewers.
All right, I'm gonna put some information in the chat in a minute. Just let me read the next question. When COVID hit, my life was seriously impacted and my grades started to fall. I know everyone always stresses you should show an upward trend, but if I explain in my personal statement what was going on through my life, is that considered? Or in other words, how would that look to you as an admission officer?
So I can go ahead and jump on the question, just because I did kind of touch on the holistic review of an application. So we do understand, you know, COVID-19 has been really tough on all of us, right? So as long as you know that 3.0 GPA, the minimum requirement, in order to, you know, get to that next step, from there, then I really do encourage you to include that in your personal statement, and really and Zia can kind of jump in, but just reading some personal statements, it's kind of sometimes cookie cutter, and sometimes it's really nice to see that outside of, what did you go through to get here? How did you overcome these different barriers? And COVID-19 is a perfect example. So definitely put that in your application, inside your personal statement, and just share that information. That upward trend, yes, sometimes the committees do look at that, of course, but those are just metrics. We also want, again, and I'll emphasize that a couple times, is just the holistic review of your application.
I wanted to just share for our application, or in our secondary essay, as we actually have an optional question: how has COVID-19 impacted you? Take the time to actually fill that optional essay out. All of you might have had different experiences, and even if it didn't directly impact you, maybe you thought of a way to volunteer. Maybe you jumped into action because of COVID. So what we're hoping, or what we're trying to get away from, we just don't want somebody just saying, this is what happened to me, and just kind of giving us a long list of things. But we also want to see what that did, and how that, how did you turn that around? How were you able to cope? How did you get through this process of even applying? So don't make it a pity party. Not that we don't feel for you, but we don't want you to see you complain. We want to see you show your resilience. We want you to see that you persevered, and that you're going to be okay if we decide to admit you and become a student at our school.
Thank you. Next question. Is it frowned upon if the LORs are dated a year or two before sending the application?
Yeah, we don't look at, the differences of a year, 2 years, 3 years. Now we're talking 15, 20 years, and maybe there's a different conversation whether those expire or not. But yeah, a year or 2, 3 years even, I don't think will make a difference.
Thank you.
I just want to add on that one, though. For us, if all of your letters are 1 or 2 years old, that might raise a flag saying, hey, why wasn't this student able to get, a more recent letter? And if you're able to provide context, that's great. But yeah, if all of your letters are older, that might raise a flag.
One small thing I will add: if any of you are current students and you currently have folks that you would like to write your letters for an application process in the future, it can be excellent to ask them for those letters now and ask them to save them, just so that if you ask them for a letter 2 years down the road, they're going to be able to provide you a letter that's much more meaningful than 2 years from now, when they don't remember nearly the same level of detail that they could provide right now.
Thanks, Zia. I say the same thing to students, and I even recommend document services like Interfolio to store your letters, and keep in touch with the professors lightly, because maybe in those 1 to 2 years that you're waiting for the application to come about, something great is going to happen, and you want that information included in the letter, and hopefully it's going to be very easy for them to go back and update the letter with a couple of sentences, rather than write it from scratch after 2 years of not having you in their class. So you definitely want to have the letters when you're ask for the letters when your relationship with the letter writer is the strongest.
Use those networking skills, everyone. I graduated from undergrad quite some time ago, but I can still go back and connect with some of my older professors that I had, some that are still there, and get a letter if need be, but I'm not going back to school, so.
Yeah, next question. Is 1 year of research enough, or do hours count more than years?
I looked at our incoming class a couple of years ago. Our class size is 186, and I looked at all of the research hours. Out of those 186 people, we had people that had 20 hours of research. We had people that had thousands of hours of research. So it really just depends on, if research is something that you enjoy, and that you use as a source of learning and growth. If it means something to you overall, by all means, do more of that. But if it's not, something that that you really have a passion for, you don't have to just cram it down your throat just to check off that research box. Unless you're applying to a program like Gio was mentioning earlier, where research is highly valued, then yeah, of course you're going to want to be able to show that you have some significant like research experiences, but just in general, you don't want to just check off boxes with hours. I think that's just in general, I'm going to digress here for just a quick second, but I think that's the worst way to approach your application, is by plugging in these blocks with hours. I got X number of hours of community service. I've got the 4.0 and I've got the 525, and you add all of that up together, and there's thousands of applicants that don't get interviewed, because they can't tie all of that together and humanize their application by talking about themselves and who they are as people. We're not admitting numbers, we're admitting human beings into a program. So don't get too caught up on the numbers of hours and just plugging in those blocks.
Thank you for that. Next question, would it be okay to talk about shadowing experience from the summer before entering college, or there is a cap on time for talking about past experiences?
I think that depends on, was that experience relevant to what is making you want to become a physician? Sorry, in the first place. But yeah, just was it relevant? If it's relevant, I say include it.
I see a lot of nodding. So would shadowing in a nursing home be considered shadowing in a clinical setting?
I'll put it for us, I think clinical experience is if you're working with a physician in a clinical setting or working with patients. If you meet any one of those three, then you could very easily consider that clinical experience.
Lots of nodding again. What counts as clinical experience? And I think Gio just said a few words on that. Anybody wants to add to that?
I'll add one thing that every now and then I will talk to students, especially if they're prospective students who were maybe a few years out from their actual application cycle. One thing that I find really valuable in clinical experiences is if an applicant or a student can spend some time working around folks who do different things in a clinical setting. Yes, we do want them to spend some time around physicians, but we also want them to spend some time around some other folks as well, some nurses, some PAs, some physical therapists, whatever the case might be, because we want them to choose to be a physician because it truly is the right fit for them, not just because when they think of a career in medicine, that's all that they think of. We would love to see them actually explore some of those other options, and at the end of the day, decide that this truly is the right fit for them. I think that's a really useful way to approach the clinical experiences. It definitely takes more time, it takes more energy, but I think it's a good way to diversify their experiences and their perspectives.
All right, next question. I am a junior majoring in economics, and I was wondering which is better, taking pre-med classes or post-bac med classes to apply for med school.
As a former pre-health advisor from way back when, honestly, that's really up to you. I think whatever path you decide to take, the goal is you want to make sure you're taking the prereqs that are required for the an ND program. But whether you do that in your undergrad years or whether you do that in the post-bac, that's totally up to you. I think for us, we're just making sure or hoping that you're doing well no matter what in your prereqs.
Post-bac programs can be quite costly, so that's another consideration that you probably should have. I'm going to send you a link to some information on our pre-health website regarding post-bac programs, and we do have some presentations on the topic because some students considering becoming pre-med late in their academic career, so they don't have the time to take the classes, so they have to find alternatives. But if you are in time for taking those prereqs, maybe you want to consider it. And if you need assistance to talk to an academic advisor, please put your name in the chat for me, and I'm going to connect you with the pre-health advisor for non-life science majors. Okay. All right. How possible is it to switch between MD and MD PhD or MSTP track once in the school?
You want to go ahead, Gio? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No worries. Mine's pretty quick. It's not common at UCLA to see students switching between tracks. So it's more so, once you've selected a track, and you've decided that's what you want to apply for, and you've enrolled and matriculated, that's for the most part the track you stick by. Now there is, I think, flexibility with if you wanted to collaborate with a professor or a student from the MSTP department or from Prime. I think that definitely is something that can happen, but traditionally we don't see students trying to get into different programs once they've matriculated into a specific track.
With us, we have the MD PhD program, and sometimes I think in an application year, maybe 1 or 2 first years will decide to go the MD PhD route and apply, as they are already current students, but not very many people. I think people pretty much stay in the lane they applied to, be that MD or MD PhD at our program.
Okay, I'm trying to multitask here. Okay, so do you have any advice for students on deciding between MD and MD PhD? Do students in MD track have opportunity to engage in research, specifically quantitative research?
I like to answer this question because we actually have, for all of our MD graduates, a scholarly project requirement. So all of our students are going to get that research experience. And it's a great way if you're not really looking to do the full, however many years it's going to take you from, anywhere from 2 to 5 years to do that additional research. You could certainly still get that experience through our general scholarly project requirement or through our research office for medical education. So I think it just depends on how much time you want to spend in that particular area. And for students in any one of those phases, there's opportunities for quantitative research. So absolutely.
Anyone else? All right, then let's move on to the next one. At what point would you think that attending a post-bac program would be necessary to boost our GPA? What GPA is too low or seen as a red flag? I want to know the answer to that.
I don't like that question, but I get it all the time. Well, for one, I'll say this. For our school, we don't have a minimum GPA or a minimum MCAT score requirement. We will say the holistic approach, like most schools perform a holistic approach. But if you're looking for a benchmark number, definitely would probably look to be above a 3.0 or higher, definitely higher. And if you're looking for an MCAT score, definitely above a 5.0, 500 or higher. I just throw out those metrics, but yeah, there's also AAMC has a really good chart, and I really wish I had that link to that. I'll see if I can find it for you before we log off, but those, I'll stop there.
Sia?
The other thing I will throw out is that we sometimes see applicants who take a post-bac program specifically for the purpose of boosting their GPA. And I really encourage applicants, if that's your sole purpose for doing so, I really encourage you to do the math before you start the program. As Christina mentioned, they can be very expensive. And the sheer number of credits that you have taken as an undergrad compared to the sheer number of credits that you would take as a post-bac, there are times when even if you get a 4.0 in that post-bac, it's just not a lot of credits. And so it may not, if you're looking at it solely boosting your GPA, it may not move that needle very far, depending on what those original credits kind of equaled out to. So I really encourage students to do the math and see just how beneficial it's going to be and just how much it truly will help before deciding if that's the right choice for them.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, next question. Should applicants for this cycle be looking to submit AMCAS to you immediately when submissions opens on May 26th, or do we have more time until the applications begin to be transmitted to your school in late June? We always say be as early as an applicant as you possibly can, but do not rush your application. If you need a little extra time, please take a couple of days a week. It's probably not going to make that big of a difference, but I want you to be proud of your application and know that you did not leave one stone unturned. So that's my spiel, usually for students. So I see Zia's hand up and Mike unmuted. So go ahead.
I agree. We're on rolling admissions. So we start interviewing in August and we interview all the way through the following March. So the earlier you get your application in, the better. We start accepting people, as do all medical schools, on October 15th. And by that time, we've already interviewed a number of people. And on October 15th, we'll probably accept 50 people right off the bat. So yeah, the earlier you get your application in, the better, but definitely, don't submit it until you feel comfortable with it and with the state it's in. So
Zia, would you like anything to add?
My hand was actually up from before, but
okay.
The only thing I will add is just because we're a DO school, our process actually goes through a COMIS, which is it's sort of a parallel process to AMCAS with very similar timelines. And exactly what Mike just said, we have a rolling admissions, and I would just very much agree. Early is absolutely best, but when you're ready is probably more important than right off the bat.
Okay, I just posted something for DO in there. So if you guys want to look into it, that's a good place to start. What is the difference between two MD paths offered at UCLA? Not the master's and the PhD route. No, the master's and the PhD route.
Of course, yeah. So we've got the traditional MD track, and then we've got the MD track. For the most part, they aren't too different. They follow the same exact HEALS curriculum, which is our new really designed curriculum. The major difference is who you're looking to affect. So traditional MD track, and I guess to make the example a bit more clearer, when you're thinking about doing your rotations, that third or fourth year, when you're getting involved with those resources, a lot of the students that are traditional MD track at the David Geffen School of Medicine campus will be doing a lot of their work at Ronald Reagan or Santa Monica, or, at very well-resourced hospitals. Whereas if you're working within the Drew track, you're going to be working specifically with individuals that are underrepresented or undersourced. So you'll be working at hospitals that have that under-resourced. Or are under-resourced. So that really is the major difference. It more so has to do just with your missions and your values and who you're looking to work with. But yeah, curriculum is exactly the same. Resources are exactly the same. When you graduate with a degree from UCLA and Drew, if you're at Drew, and if you're at UCLA, one from UCLA. So they for the most part do follow those parallels.
So we're running low on time, so I'm gonna try to speed this up a little bit. For shadowing, do you recommend shadowing with several different type of physicians in healthcare settings, and what would you think of shadowing non-physicians in addition to traditional shadowing such as nurses? That's a good question.
I think anything that gets you experience and insight into how medical teams function, and anything that helps you, foreclose on a career in medicine is going to be helpful to you. The reviewer is not going to, look at your shadowing experience and say, this person shadowed this or that, ranked person, and therefore, that's a better applicant. They're just looking to see, did this applicant do their due diligence in exploring this career, and are they coming in fully committed to this to this career path, or are they testing the waters? And a lot of that, the way reviewers look at that is going to depend on how you talk about that experience.
All right, next question. For the personal statement, is it too cliche to mention a family member's illness, even if it's a true story, and plays a part of in your aspiration or inspiration to go into medicine?
So I don't like the word cliche. Yes, it's true that earlier I had mentioned very cookie cutter with some of the personal statements, but I think, and you know, some of my colleagues on the screen or even Zia can kind of chime in, but I think if you add that personal touch as to why and really relate it to, you know, any of that specialties that you're really looking for. I know particularly for us as a DO school, a lot of our applicants tend to, you know, be on the fence of a DO or MD. So really just emphasizing, at least on our end, why you want to go into osteopathic medicine. Is it serving your community? Is it the holistic, you know, hands-on approach? I think adding that, is that what sparked your interest from that family member's illness, like that connection with the physician being there, that really will highlight that. So not necessarily a cliche, but just make sure you really emphasize what it is that made you passionate to become a physician and what that connection was.
Thank you so much. And there is, okay, I'm going to ask this one more question and then we can, and there are a couple of questions directly to UCLA. So hopefully Gio can type the answer for that. And one question about pre-health advising for science majors. For academic advising, meaning prereqs, you go to your academic counselors in your department, in your life science department. Otherwise, if you need help with clinical research experience, things like that, you find a pre-health advising appointment at the Career Center. So, and the final question, and this is a good one too. How would you recommend balancing between showing dedication towards a few activities versus including a larger number of activities that may have fewer hours individually, but show that you have obtained multiple perspectives on medicine and worked with different medical professionals? For example, hospital volunteering at different hospitals. Anyone?
Yeah, it's a tough question, but it's a great one because really, you know, we say that we want to see kind of that engagement with a particular activity, that you know, spent enough time with it, that it means something to you, and that it, you know, is helping you in your education. But if part of, you know, your journey includes trying out some different things because you're not really sure, I think the best thing to do in your application is provide context to that. The worst thing you could do in your application is kind of present all this information, but really leave out the context as to why you made those choices. If you can justify in your application why you've made all these decisions, that's really all that we're looking for. So,
anyone else would like to add to that? So would you like to see more diverse experiences or longer engagements in fewer experiences? I get this question all the time too.
I think for me personally, I think it goes back to other things that other folks have said, but the engagement really speaks differently than I would rather see you plant some roots within an organization or an experience or something. There's nothing wrong with trying a bunch of different things. There's nothing wrong with diversity and experiences. That those can be very beneficial things, but it sort of gets into that feeling of checking boxes, whereas if you show a true commitment to something over time, I feel like that speaks differently about your motivations for doing it, and your experiences from doing it. So I think there are certainly benefits either way, but it really comes down to your motivations and what you're gaining from it.
Thank you so much for everybody for the great advice and sharing your tips and information. Thank you, students, for showing up today. I'm going to stop recording.